What is up, everyone? Happy birthday to America and happy day to you for joining us here on the Coast to Coast podcast from InsideCarolina.com, brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt. All right. I am not Matthew McConaughey. I'm Joey Powell, your host for Inside Carolina's Coast to Coast podcast, coming at you again. Sorry, we had to take last week off. Sherrell was out helping develop a new Powerade flavor, so he was unavailable. Sean has actually been in Kansas City scouting places that he can eat ribs next week when he goes for the EYBL tour. So we weren't able to get a show for you last week. We appreciate you guys being patient. I did tease on the message boards that we have this show coming with a lot of content, and I'm working on something else special for you guys that I think you're going to like. So stay tuned for those. But for tonight, we're glad that you're here as we record this here on the eve of our country's Independence Day. Hope that you have celebrated in whatever fashion that you're going to celebrate. As Americans, you know, we like to blow stuff up on July the 4th. So I hope that you've done that and saved all of your limbs and appendages. But with me, as always, to make this show what it is, Sean Moran, all the way from the left coast. Sean, how are you? Is it still July 4th where you are?
Yep, still July 4th. Still some fireworks to go.
Awesome. And glistening with his beautiful podcast glow, Sherrell McMillan. Sherrell, how are you?
I'm good. Excited to be back after we took last week off. So ready to talk.
Yeah, Sherrell had a milestone birthday recently. We won't say how old he was, but it rhymes with Smorty. So congratulations on reaching another trip around the sun, Sherrell. Boys, we have a ton of things to talk about tonight here on the Coast to Coast. I hope that everybody listening will follow us, subscribe, rate, review, all of those good things. If you're watching us on YouTube, you know, tell your friends. I know we're all good looking, but there's more than those reasons to tune into the show on a regular basis. Last time we came to you was in emergency fashion talking about Pete Nance and the Northwestern grad transfers commitment to North Carolina to play the 4 spot for the Heels next year. We had talked about what that might look like. Sean and Sherrell have given great analysis on that. Guys, one more time, is there anything else you want to add now that we know that Pete Nance is officially in Chapel Hill, has joined the team, and will be a part of the roster? Sherrell?
Particularly, I just think, again, this goes back to a North Carolina team that now seemingly has, no holes, no known holes. In that there's a backup center now, also a potential starting 4. And then it kind of spreads everybody else throughout the roster and creates a lot of balance. So just a huge pickup. And then, I mean, he was on campus 2 days later. So he's already, like we talked about before, getting used to being on campus, learning the culture. And, the early reviews from what people have said publicly and what people have said privately is that it's kind of a home run. So early yet, but it seems to be trending in a positive direction, and just a really good signing for North Carolina, all things considered, that late into June.
I'm going to hereby say that on this show, we will not compare him in any way, shape, or form to Brady Manick, because I think that's going to be the low-hanging fruit for most folks when they're making analytical comparisons next year. So we're not going to do that here on this show. Sean, I would like to ask you specifically, though. The official team social media handles put out some quick video work of the first practice they had during the summer. And I saw a Pete Nance with a little bit of a crab dribble and his 6'10" long legs, making what looks to be like a step and a half to go from the free throw line to the lane. But it looked good. It looked smooth. Is that something we can expect to see that maybe we didn't see in his game because he played for a plodding offense in Northwestern?
Well,
this is your chance to rip on Big Ten basketball, man. I'm teeing it up for you.
That's why I'm laughing, because you said you weren't going to talk about the Big Ten at all on this podcast. But in terms of plotting style, it'd obviously be a little faster paced than the typical Big Ten game. I think for him, we will see him. He does have the ability to drive left. I think driving right is a little bit. He's not as comfortable. So I think if he catches the ball from the perimeter and somebody comes running at him, he can get to the rim in really one dribble, just given his length. So looking forward to seeing that, maybe seeing some things that he didn't show in the Northwestern offense. And then I think, as we've said countless times, the main question mark will be defensively. How does he perform? But in general, Sherrell hit the nail on the head. He offers a lot of positional flexibility with the team and the talent. And I think for myself, and I would assume the majority of other Tar Heel fans, it'll be nice after 3 years to have a team that is coming into the season with a legit number 1, top 5 resume and roster versus the last few years, where even last year was really until mid-February for them to get rolling. So that obviously brings other issues, but I think that can be something everybody's enjoying as we look forward to the start of the season.
Yeah, man. I actually I came from a cookout. I did not come from a barbecue, because you cannot come from a barbecue because barbecue is food or a way to cook food. But I came from a cookout before I got here, and um, a lot of Tar Heel fans there. Generally, the vibe, like, people are really excited about. I don't know. It's got that old feeling back where it's not the expectation that we've talked about here, where Tar Heels are expected to be good. Like, fans are actually, I think they're hanging over now, and they've got this vibe from seeing Pete Nance fill out the roster that they're really excited about potential, as opposed to the old Tar Heel fan expectation of things being good. Now that may change once the calendar rolls over to November and they start playing, but either way, um, something else we
Well,
want
Joey,
to go ahead.
I was going to say, to your point, I mean, look, into Sean's point, look at the last 3 years. That kind of expectation has not been there, and I think fans are a little reticent to kind of go back there. And so it's this weird combination of, like, North Carolina should be really good and they're expected to be really good, but my heart's been broken the last 3 years, so I want to just hold off a little bit. I think that's kind of what you're seeing from the fan base, which you articulated, which I think is a fair point. Like, yeah, they should be really good, but there's just that little bit in the back of their head, like, maybe they won't be. So I think that's why it's like a cautious optimism almost. So I've seen it as well. So that's a great point by you.
Stove is still hot, right? Like, they're not quite the despaired fan base that the football fans are. And again, full confession, I've had the same feelings about Tar Heel football as well. Um, Something I want to get to here, and it's important that we mention it, I think, because we would be doing a disservice to our listeners and to IC subscribers if we did not mention it. But as we record this today, a rumor has circulated, started primarily, from what I can tell, unsourced by, or at least the source wasn't alluded to, but it seems to be started by a writer for another site, and it's not a 24/7 site, pertaining to G.G. Jackson and the potential of him ending up at South Carolina and decommitting from North Carolina. So again, we're not trying to give credence to that rumor at all. I'm going to let Sherrell speak to it a little bit, but more so we're acknowledging that we know the rumor is out there, and we feel like we would not be doing a service to our listeners and IC subscribers if we didn't at least say, hey, we know it's there. This is what we know. So I'm going to shut up. Sherrell, have at it, man.
So I like to start with the facts of the case. So obviously he is committed to UNC. He made that decision in April. Basically, we all agree that he came down to Duke to some degree, but mostly South Carolina and North Carolina. And South Carolina was dealt a major blow when Frank Martin was fired. At the time, there was a lot of, I don't want to call it pressure, but a lot of people in Columbia wanted him to stay home and be kind of the Asia Wilson of men's basketball at South Carolina. And there have been conversations going back to probably January, I think is really the first time I really heard it, about him reclassing into 2022, coming to school year early, which puts him eligible for the draft next year, which means he could be in the NBA. Basically, at that point, it was like 18 months. So it'd be a calendar year from now, essentially. So there's the background for that. But he did commit to UNC. And all along, kind of the folks we talked to from the very first time, we kind of mentioned GG more than a year ago, probably about 14, 15 months ago. It was Carolina, maybe South Carolina. That was pretty much it the whole time. So these two schools have been linked to him for some time. I think I came out and said it more than a year ago. It was like, I'll be surprised if he goes anywhere but South Carolina or North Carolina. So I give all that background to say these schools were in it deep with him. And I think when you're the number one recruit in the country, which he is close to being consensus, he's not quite yet, but I think he'll probably get there soon with the way he's been playing and developing. People are going to call you, whether it's the G League, whether they should or not, other schools, in basketball and football, the whole commitment thing means a little bit different. Decommitments have seeped over some into basketball, but not nearly as pervasive as they are in football. So the number one player is going to get recruited whether he's committed or not. So that's part of what goes with having a number one recruit committed to your school. As far as the rumors go, if Gigi and the family wanted to shut this stuff down, you think they would do it? As far as, picking a high school, making a decision in that regard, and maybe they're close to doing it, but that's why this stuff continues to persist. And it does make you wonder, that this keeps coming back over and over again. Is it we're not all on the same page deal? Is it a situation where just having difficulty making a final decision? I mean, I'll take myself as an example, not nearly as important, but we looked at like 40 houses before we made a decision, and then we offered them one and tried to get another one. Like, these decisions are tough, these life-changing things. So I said all of that to say, I understand kind of where the rumor came from, I think, and why it came. Whether or not it is accurate, frankly, I don't know. I don't think it is, but this is recruiting, man. Crazy stuff happens all the time. Typically, it doesn't happen in North Carolina. I don't think North Carolina's ever had a decommitment. J.R. Smith is probably as close as it comes, and he went to the NBA. James Curry was going to Carolina, but then he had a legal situation. Those are only two I can think of in the last 20 years, really the last 22 years, I guess now, that come close to a decommit. So all that to say, we'll see. At this point, I still expect him to eventually enroll at UNC. But, I don't think people are making things up for no reason. I think, if you reported that, I think there's got to be something there. So we'll see what happens. And I don't mean to make people think that we're saying that Gigi's decommitting or anything, because we're not. I still think he ultimately ends up at UNC, but and I don't mean to carry on for a long time, but we deal with rumors all the time throughout the offseason, transfers and people signing here and people getting released here, and people deciding that they're going to decommit, all kinds of stuff that we hear. You'd be surprised. Some of the best players in Carolina history, some of those rumors were attached to. So it's something that we do track. We don't usually say anything because most of the time none of them come to fruition. But we are monitoring it. We're talking to people. We're reaching out. And when we have something concrete, we will let you know. But everything that Gigi has said publicly is that he wants to be at UNC and in 2023. So that's as much as we have to go on right now.
I think the biggest thing to take away from what you just said, at least from my ears, is that if something changes, you never say never. You're never gonna be able to make everything static. And Sherrell is not a soothsayer or someone that can read the future. But what I will say, and I will toot Inside Carolina's horn here, we, meaning Inside Carolina's staff, but specifically you, Sherrell, have been very consistent in sharing what you know. And I think even right before that, right before Gigi's commitment, there were some folks saying other things. So I would say if Sherrell says it, then I would tend to believe it. For those who are listening and watching this show, take that as you will. Can't really plan for the future, but you heard what Sherrell said, and if there's more to report Inside Carolina, we'll have it for you. But just consider this is what's like having the number one, or what could be, as you said, the consensus number one recruit in the class, right? All right, moving on. I just have a boss that would always say, moving on. That's when he would want to move the agenda forward and get us to stop beating something to death. Speaking of Gigi Jackson, one of the reasons that he's been such a hot commodity and such a hot topic this past week was his performance at the NBA Players Association event this past week, where if you've been on social media at all, you have seen my man was sick with it. Shout out to the N1 mixtape tour. Sean, I want to go to you first. I saw a lot of things, and I don't watch half as much tape as you guys do. I saw a lot of things from Gigi this past week that I had not seen before. And as we've talked about here, his AAU setting has not lent to him showing off his skill set as much as he probably could. I think the shackles were off this week at the NBPA thing. Tell us a little bit about what you think about that.
Well, I'll definitely defer to Sherrell, who was there in person, because I only got to watch a bunch of highlights where anybody can look good. But I think in those highlights, you got to see some things he really didn't see in the early AAU sessions for the most part, as well as even the high school season. A little bit better, what looked like a little better shooting ability, but more importantly, off the dribble, you saw a lot of the mid-range getting to his spots off the dribble. I think his percentage from three was still subpar, which has kind of been a theme throughout high school and and AAU, but I think the moves that he was doing were a lot different than what we had seen, which once again goes to show the continued improvement. And you can go back to the USA U18 FIBA event that he was playing in, and unfortunately his tournament got cut short after just 2 games. But that second game, he did have, I think it was 21 points, a lot of it coming late. But I think everybody was excited to see how he was going to progress through that tournament before he got sick. But now you got to see it in the top 100 camp where he was named MVP. And usually the MVPA top 100, you're bringing, for the most part, the best of the best, bringing in different guys from shoe circuits. A few guys weren't there with the USA U17s going on, but still a very talented group. So we'll love to see or hear from Sherrell in terms of what he looked like going through the full games.
Yeah, so see, I threw that to you, hoping you could just pick parts of things from highlight tape. But knowing Sherrell has seen the full body of work, I'm with you. Let's hear what the man who was in person last week, what he has to say after being at the wild world of sports and letting us know kind of just how Gigi looked with. First off, take a step back. Sherrell, who all shows up at this event? Who are the players that are invited?
So it's a mix of 2023. It's a mix of the rising junior class, the rising senior class, and one rising sophomore. So pretty much those are the guys. It's a little bit diluted compared to what it used to be. Probably, I'll say before USA basketball really became like a thing again, around 2011. But there used to be legit pretty much the top 100 players in the country. Now it's more like 60 of the top 100, maybe like 50 of the top 100.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a very valuable camp because a lot of these guys, even though they're playing more, they don't play against each other because some of them are on different circuits. But you are missing some of that top tier talent, like Carter Knox and Ian Jackson and Trey Johnson, and a lot of the guys who are in Spain, or some of the guys who got cut from that team. The USA team decided not to go because they've got 2 evaluation periods over the next 2 weeks, and it is a very long, I want to call it grueling, but it is an involved camp. They got there on Sunday night / Monday morning. They have seminars Monday and Tuesday, pretty much all day. There's a 3-on-3 tournament, and then they have games all day Wednesday, all day Thursday, and then towards the end on Friday with the championship game. They're all played with NBA rules, so they're very long games. They're all 48 minutes with a running clock, 12 minutes a quarter. So the guys, it's a little different for them, getting used to that. And everybody plays 2 games a day. So that's kind of the setup. As far as like personnel, NBA executives are allowed there from Tuesday through Friday. So executives and scouts and, pretty much everything. Adam Silver was there on Wednesday and spoke to the campers. That was kind of a big deal. I can't remember him ever being there. And then college coaches were allowed in for pretty much a 36-hour window. I guess it's closer to 48. They showed up on Wednesday morning at 8, and they could watch until Thursday afternoon at 5. And so that basically consists of 2 sessions of live games each day. The North Carolina staff, all 4 coaches were there. And then they stayed for the first 3 sessions. And then it typically gets pretty ragged by the 4th day that afternoon. So didn't see anybody from UNC there Thursday afternoon. Feel like they saw what they needed to see. So that is the setup of what MBPA camp is. As far as Gigi Jackson, he was pretty phenomenal. And I know the percentages maybe don't show it, but you can see how his game is continuing to evolve. It's like aggressive expansion is what his game is right now. It's like every time there's something new or something different that he either couldn't do before or hadn't perfected before. This time it was attacking the basket. It was as if him and his dad and his mom and his trainers and his coaches said, we want you to show the country that you can attack the basket on every play, because pretty much, there were times where he was running point guard, honestly. Now he's not going to be a point guard at the next level. That's not what he is or what he can be. But he's improved his handles that much that he can do it in spots. And pretty much it was a lot of, there was some isolation, but there was a lot of movement. He was the ball handler a lot of times on pick and rolls, which is a new development. And so he was in kind of a 4-5 pick and roll with Aiden Sherrell, who's the big on that team, or Jaron Stevenson, who was the other big on that team, and they were just kind of carving guys up with that. The other thing I liked about him is that it was there were some moves with the ball in his hand, but a lot of it was going downhill. So he would make maybe one or two moves at tops most of the time when he was successful. When he had some issues, when he had some turnovers, is when he went from a hesitation to a crossover behind the back. When you start adding, different combos, that's when he ran into issues. But when it was a quick hesitation pull up or a quick hesitation drive or a quick hesitation crossover into a spin, all that stuff was on point, man. It really is striking to see how far it's come in 6 or 7 months. So again, when you start talking about him as a 2023 kid, it's like, man, if he continues to develop like that in high school, in a controlled environment, in a good place for development, when he enters college, maybe he's going to be a little bit more ready than we initially thought. But again, if you look at it as a 2022, then it's like some of that development might not come because he's going to be, playing against grown men immediately in a couple of months. But overall, really good camp. I think the negatives were sometimes getting a little sloppy with the ball handling, some of the turnovers, but a lot more positive than negative. And his motor was running high too. He wanted to show that he was the guy.
I loved, again, I wasn't there, but I saw some of the things you just talked about specifically with him going downhill. But some of the contested shots he was hitting with guys all over him, moving, like you said, downhill, some of them moving to his left, a little crossover, jump shots from the elbow, that kind of stuff. Again, I don't see half the stuff you guys do, but trying to speak for most of the folks in the IC audience and our listeners, that stuff was tasty. Was there, again, in a team setting, did you see some things otherwise with regard to like facilitation or non-offensive stuff that, again, maybe you don't see in an AAU setting, or maybe you didn't see with his AAU team because of the personnel?
Really just mentality. I know that we start talking about intangibles, it gets kind of shaky, but just the fact that he came out in the first game, I think the first possession or two, grabbed the rebound, pushed the ball up court, was kind of telling people what to do. He has been, for I would say the majority of his high school career, kind of a quiet, non-vocal leader. I mean, his coaches have said that. He said that in the past. And I think this time, he went out and wanted to be the guy, and he was very vocal. He was telling people what to do, just kind of dominating. People always talk about how they want like the alpha on the team or whatever. And he was definitely that with his particular team. And it showed because, they went undefeated and ended up winning, the whole thing. So I thought that was important. He battles on the boards, man. At one point, I thought that may be an area of concern for him, but he can get on the perimeter sometimes, and you're like, okay, you've got some skills that are burgeoning in that area, but you can really make an impact down low. And so he might forget for 3 or 4 minutes, but then he would go back there. And then he's a good shot blocker as well. There wasn't a ton of like switching onto guards in this particular camp. His coach was Justin Anderson, who used to play at UVA. Really coveted a UNC offer, but it just never didn't quite work out that way. But they didn't, like I said, they didn't do a lot of switching, but learning from someone like Anderson, who probably was a little bit ahead of his time as one of those big athletic, would have been a true four. Now I think it was good for him. And he just had a good camp overall, just a really, really good camp. And I'm trying not to praise too much. That's why I'm choosing my words carefully, because it was really, really impressive. And I don't want to dial up the hype meter even more because the kid's already number one.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was really impressive.
You do a pretty good job, like you said, of picking your words and trying to keep yourself from being a prisoner of the moment. Sim Wilcher, also one of those guys that was there. Talk a little bit about his week. Obviously, he wasn't getting the headlines that that Jackson was, but can you share a little bit about maybe what you saw from him? And Sean, I'm going to ask you the same thing when Sherrell finishes up.
Yeah, just I think he's finally starting to get healthy. I mean, that ankle sprain he had in April was really, really bad. And I think you're starting to see him for the first time kind of healthy. He's at his best, again, just like GG when he's going downhill, because of his size. If he can get by you, it's going to be really tough to stop, just because he's a big guard and he's always kind of, I won't say flagrantly, but like just aggressively going downhill to the basket. He had a couple of nice passes. I think with him is just continue to improve his outside jump shot. But I think he's going to be, you know, a really good player at North Carolina. You know, his national status at this point, I don't know if he really cares about it, just because he's committed and, you know, he's kind of a top 25 guy everywhere. So that's not a huge concern, but just going out and playing and continue to work on the ball handling, I think, and the jump shot. And he's got a high ceiling as well. And that's pretty much what he did. He blended from time to time. That's not necessarily a bad thing. But there were other moments when he did kind of take control and handle the ball and you know, really help his team.
Sean, same thing.
Well, Sherrell just mentioned blended. And I think you go back to the high school season, and he put up some really, really good numbers, but he played on a really talented team, and he always made sure to get everybody involved. Even looking at last year, he played up a year on the Nike EYBL circuit, but I think he averaged close to 5 assists per game, which pretty impressive, no matter what age you are in the Nike EYBL. And this year, Sherrell mentioned the injury and also switching teams and kind of getting used to things. So hopefully this week kind of served as just maybe a stepping stone into July, where he's going to get tested both in EYBL and Kansas City and then the Peach Jam. And I think he does have something to prove with the Carolina offer and with the reputation. So hopefully he is healthy, and the NBPA just kind of got him ready in terms of maybe starting to blend, you know, maybe blend out a little bit more in terms of really starting to be the go-to guy. So I'm looking forward to watching that in Kansas City, hopefully next week.
Yeah, TBD on that. So as we're sitting here talking about, you know, these kids playing in different places, you know, Sean, you've seen them, you will see them in KC next week. You know, there have been other times where they've played Houston, other places around the country. You start thinking about, you know, America as a whole, right? July the 4th, you start thinking about America as a whole. You start thinking about saluting the flag. Our friends at Johnny T-Shirt have a UNC themed America flag that you can purchase if you'd like to. How do you like that? Melding your Tar Heel fandom with honoring America. Go to johnnytshirt.com. They can take care of it. They have a 3x5 UNC USA style flag with grommets, $24.99 on johnnytshirt.com right now. If you look, if you are a fan of the Tar Heels, which we know you are, you wouldn't be listening to the show. You know about Johnny T-Shirt, the Carolina store, right there on East Franklin Street in Chapel Hill. We're big fans of theirs. They've been supporting Inside Carolina for so long. Father's Day just passed us. I know a lot of dads that got hooked up with some really, really good gear from Johnny T-Shirt. They've got you squared away. A lot of lacrosse gear on the site right now. You know, UNC lacrosse has been a really strong program over the not so recent past. And if you support UNC lacrosse or any other sport, go to johnnytshirt.com, get your gear. Johnny T-Shirt, they are huge, huge supporters, locally owned, alumni operated. And if you're an Inside Carolina premium subscriber, which I have no idea why you would not be, you get that extra 10% off the top. Use it, get the code from the premium message boards, go to Johnny T-Shirt. You'll be glad you did. And as I've said a million times, if they don't have it, you don't need it. Take a quick break in a second. Sherrell, you want to add one more thing about G.G. Jackson. You're muted.
I'm sorry, 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off. This goes back to the first part.
You're getting old, man. It happens.
Yeah.
When you hit certain milestones, your faculties start going away from you.
Yeah, this goes back to the first thing we were talking about. Just a couple other facts. So one, just general information. One, if Jackson had wanted to reclass into North Carolina when it had a scholarship, it would have taken him. So that is not just for what that's worth. So I don't think the idea that what happened with other scholarships afterwards being an issue for Jackson and the family, I don't think that is entirely accurate based upon everything that we know. Just wanted to throw that in there and add that too.
I appreciate it because that timing is important. And as people are trying to surmise things from the tea leaves on the interwebs right now, they're starting to draw conclusions that may not be connected. So appreciate you clarifying that. All right, take a quick break. Since we did our amazing Johnny T-Shirt mention, they'll want to drop some national ads in here, help pay the bills. Stick around. We'll be right back with more Coast to Coast here on InsideCarolina.com. All right. We are back, still talking about recruiting because that seems to be what's happening most of the time during the summer. Sean, before I start getting to new offers for Hubert Davison's staff, you're going to be in Kansas City next week for a rib eating contest and may also watch some basketball. Tell us a little bit about what you're going to see at the Nike EYBL live period.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get out there. It's been a while since I've been to a Nike EYBL event. Last year, was at the Under Armour event, watching way too much Isaac Trout during the weekend. So will be good to see both Gigi and Wiltshire in person after watching a ton of their high school and earlier AAU tape. But more importantly, a lot of the 2024 class, which has been ramping up in terms of the interest and the offers and the calls. So I think that to me is probably one of the most exciting parts of just getting to see these guys in person outside of the high school highlight tapes or full game tapes, and just get to see a lot of the guys that we'll be talking about for the next year, 2 years, whatever it may be. So that'll be the main thing in between barbecue stops.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll be sending unsolicited photos of your food to Sherrell and I, as always. Some of those guys that Sean will be seeing next week as he heads to Kansas City. 3 new offers have come out since we have talked with you all last. I want to mention them. I'm going to give the guys vitals, and I'm going to let Sean, I want you to give a little bit about their game. Sherrell, I want you to give it a little bit about what the recruitment looks like as we sit here in early July. First one being Ian Jackson. I think he's number 2 in Scouts rankings, 6'4" wing guard from the Bronx. Sean.
Yeah, so right now he's playing in the USA U17s. First 2 games, 21 points in a blowout against Lebanon, and then I think 11 points in a blowout, but not as bad, Slovenia. So right now he's been playing pretty well from the Bronx. I think the main thing about him is he knows how to put the ball in the basket. He was the Max Preps Player of the Year in the sophomore class. In terms of improvement points, I think it goes to his outside shooting. That has been an area that he struggled at, I'd say last year, but once again, he's just going into his junior year, and I think already starting to see signs of that, whether it's been in AAU or some of the summer camps that he has been playing in. So really, I mean, he is an athletic scorer that is extremely aggressive on both sides of the ball.
And Sherrell, you want to talk a little bit about what his recruitment has looked like, including whatever you can share about contact before and after the offer.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. He hadn't talked to UNT before Hubert Davis called and gave him an offer. So that was interesting. He was kind of like, "Oh, this is pretty cool. I hadn't heard from you before until today, and now you're offering me a scholarship." So that's kind of cool. Other than that, man, I mean, he's a top 5 consensus, kid in the country pretty much. So all the normal people you would expect to be there are going to be there. He plays on the Adidas circuit, so that maybe could give a leg up to some of the schools, who like Kansas and Louisville potentially. But the school most linked to him right now is Kentucky. Also when you're talking about top 5 kids, then the G League is going to be there as well. So I don't know exactly where this goes for UNC until kids get on campus and visit. Can't really take their recruitment by UNC too seriously. And at this point, remember, no matter what a recruit tells you, there are no visits in July. So no one can visit in July unless they are signed to that school already. So for example, if Seth Trimble wasn't enrolled at UNC right now and wanted to take an official visit, he could do that in July because he signed. But no one else can be on campus at all in July. So once August hits and some of these kids can start taking their official visits, I think that's where you monitor how serious they are about North Carolina. And I think that's where we are with Jackson as well.
All right. Well, appreciate the heads up there on Ian Jackson. Again, 6'4" wing guard out of the Bronx. And you're going to hear a lot of similarities in some of these offers. I mean, as we've seen before, Hubert Davis established very quickly last year that he loves guys that can shoot and he loves wings that can score. Next one in that same mold, Trey Johnson, 6'5" wing guard out of Dallas. He attends Lake Highlands High School. Sean, what have you seen in this kid's game?
So he's a number 3 prospect, according to 24/7. So really neck and neck with Jackson. And I think there's definitely some similarities as well as differences. I'd say for Trey, he is definitely a better outside shooter. I was about to say smooth, and then remember how much Ben Sherman hates that word, so I stopped myself on that one. But he has a really strong skill set in terms of dribble combos and step backs, a good looking 3-point shot. I do think he lacks a little bit of the explosiveness first step to get him all the way to the basket. You can see him finishing well when he's in transition, but in the half court set, it's really catch and shoot and getting to his spot off the dribble for kind of mid-range pull-ups. But this is a kid that is extremely lanky right now, and I think still growing into his body. So right now you have the number 3 prospect who got cut from both the USA U16s and U17s, and I think that probably goes a lot to just still growing into his body and not being a finished prospect right now. But he's a guy that is playing a year up on the U17 EYBL circuit, so he's a guy that I will get to watch in person this coming week.
So I'll go ahead and go. I'll go ahead, Joe. Yeah, you were muted, Joey. I don't know if you knew that. Sorry.
No, I'm muted. Now I'm the one that doesn't know how to use things. Okay. Sherrell, please follow Sean up. Thank you.
So he's a kid out of Texas from a recruiting perspective, and we all know that Texas is another hotbed for hoops right now. He's outside of Dallas, and one of the things about him, a cool little story, is his dad is also a coach, and obviously Hubert Davis played in Dallas for a few years, and so I don't know how close. It's not a close relationship, but they do know of each other because his dad played basketball as well, and so there's kind of that connection there. But as far as his recruitment, I mean, again, all the Texas schools are going to be in there. All the Midwest schools, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arizona, pretty much anybody in that part of the country has already offered. So it's going to be the same things that we said about Ian Jackson, in that when you are rated the way he is, with the skills that he has, you're going to attract every great college, and then you're also going to attract pro options. So not only will North Carolina have to recruit against Texas and Texas Tech and Texas A&M and Kansas and Oklahoma and Oklahoma State and Alabama and on down the line, they also have to recruit against the G League more than likely. So that would be both of these would be tough pulls. Hubert Davis has done it; he's proven that he can do it. But again, until these guys actually get on campus, I think it's probably best to temper expectations about how involved North Carolina can be. We saw that another player who recently UNC was in on and really we thought had a chance with in Montes Buzelis didn't get on campus and ended up going to the G League. So I really think that campus visit is a big line between those who are really serious about North Carolina and who are serious about potentially going there, and maybe those who might like it but don't have really serious intentions on attending there.
I'm considering establishing like a set of ground rules or rules of engagement for this podcast, and that would be one of them. Like, don't take a UNC recruitment seriously until said prospect visits campus, because more often than not, man, you're right. Like it doesn't become real until they actually show up. All right, next, and this is one that it was really cool to see, even on a holiday week or week at the NBPA. It was good to see Hubert Davis get up off of that thing and offer James Brown, 6'10" power forward out of Chicago, St. Rita's. Sean, talk about the big man's game a little bit.
Always good to see a Chicago player offered, and definitely a guy, right, without knowing really anything about the recruitment, that probably has much more of a chance on visiting than past Chicago players offered by UNC. But for Brown, you mentioned 6'10", plays for St. Rita's. The really interesting thing about him is when you're watching him, you on the highlights, you start seeing all these left-handed dunks, and you're like, oh, is he a lefty? But then you see him hitting 12, 15-foot jump shots, shooting right-handed. So it turns out he's a natural lefty that shoots right-handed. So around the rim, you're going to see a little bit of both, and the ability to finish with either hand, the ability to hit a hook with either hand. Not the most athletic of players, which I think is great when you're looking at a big man in terms of him being around for more than 1 year in college. But a guy similar to Johnson that I think is continuing to grow into his body and get a little stronger and just a little more sure of himself. But right now he likes to get out in transition. He runs the floor well. He can block shots, aggressive around the rim. So I think he out of the three we've talked about, I'd say probably most excited about that offer and seeing what that could potentially turn into. I think right now he's ranked 32nd in the class, but I think a lot of potential, especially in the college game for him.
Sherrell, again, I'm going to come to you about the recruitment. Was it just the fact that he was in a cold sweat when Hubert Davis saw him this week at the NBPA, or is there more to it?
After the game, he went on the floor, and the players came in and put a cape on him after the game. James Brown humor, for those who don't know,
game really wasn't over. It really wasn't over. He came back and played another quarter.
No, he played well. So the game that Hubert Davis saw. So taking his recruitment all the way back, let's start over. So UNC called him on June 15th. Sean May is his lead assistant. So May had Jalen Washington, who's outside of Chicago, and now he has James Brown, who is from Chicago or from outside of Chicago, but goes to school in Chicago. And they were like, hey, we like you a lot, but we want to watch you some more. He was at USA. He got cut from USA. I think the final cut's actually that Wednesday. And so that's Friday. He was back with his high school team playing during the live period. And at some point during those few days, he got an invite to NBPA, decided to go, flew down to Orlando, performed well. It was the second game of that first day on Wednesday that Hubert Davis saw him. He was going against Xavier Booker, who is one of the top 10, top 15 guys in his class. He's 7'1", kind of that lanky, prototypical frame that you like in bigs now. And then there was another player, his name escapes me, and I feel bad for forgetting his name, but he is built like your prototypical left tackle. He was like 6'7", 305, and he could move, he could jump. So two very different styles of bigs, and he handled himself pretty well against both of those styles. He was able to handle Booker to some degree. I don't think Booker scored but 2 points in that game. They weren't always on each other, but he had the cover part of the time. He stuck his nose in there and rebounded despite being smaller than a couple of those two guys. And then he withstood taking kind of a beating from the bigger guy in the post. He had a couple nice layups. He ran the floor well. Really smart player. Always talking on the court, always pointing things out. And Hubert Davis offered later that night. So, like we wrote in the story, he kind of saw what he needed to see. As far as his recruitment goes, Illinois has a lot of built-in advantages with him. One is the home state school. That's always a big deal. One of his former teammates is committed to play at Illinois. The program director of his AU program, which is Mean Streets, is now an assistant coach at Illinois. and then St. Rita has another player. His name is Andrus. His name is Nogus, but I'm not going to try and pronounce his last name.
I thought you were going to say some other player on his team was Chief Illini Way in the football season. I don't know.
I want to say Nogus Indronitis.
Yeah, bless you. Okay.
I'm not sure if that's correct. Anyway, he's another top target for Illinois. So there's a lot of Illinois. I think they were maybe his first D1 offer, if not his first, definitely his first Power 5. There's a lot of advantages there with him. The things to know about him: his dad played football at Howard University in DC, and then his mom really didn't play sports, but she went to Cincinnati in Ohio. And he has told us that he knows the North Carolina program. He's admired it from afar. So we'll see. And obviously he'll be talking to Jalen Washington, former, in the same program, have the same skills trainer. So I'm sure those two will have some conversations about what it's like going from the Midwest to UNC.
Tell you what, man.
You did mention all those Illinois connections, but still think, if you're in the city of Chicago, it's still not a snap of the fingers that you're going to Illinois. They've continued to struggle despite improving from what it used to be.
That's right. Let that Big Ten hate come through you, Sean. Let it flow through you. One of the things I did want to mention too is, and our listeners will probably pick up on this, it's become really remarkable how often UNC has been going against Illinois for players in the very recent past. Whether it's for grad transfers or elsewhere, it seemed like all of a sudden now Illinois is neck and neck with UNC for a lot of recruits, both from the prep standpoint and grad transfers. The other thing to mention about these three guys, Ian Jackson, Trey Johnson, and James Brown, they join Cam Scott and Jaron Stevenson as the other two players of the 24 class that hold UNC offers that we can confirm right now. Obviously, as we head into the July live period very soon, which Sean mentioned he'll be in Kansas City, coaches will be seeing more of these guys, and there will be more offers coming soon. Sherrell, before we get out of here today, is there anybody that you feel like subscribers and I see subscribers and listeners to this show should kind of pay attention to as to who might be next on the offer sheet?
Kind of everything happened. So I think that is another way that you can kind of glean how UNC feels is, do they reach back out to Zayden High? If they feel that things maybe aren't going the way that they thought with GG and his recruitment or his commitment. So that's something to watch next week is how much they're looking at guys in 2023. There was a player they were supposed to watch, and he actually got hurt last week. So I'm sure they'll follow up with him. Jamie Kaiser. He is a kind of a wing, I guess a 3-4, 4-3, depending on who you ask. He's someone that they could look at some more. And then we'll just have to see, because the thing about the NBPA camp is so close to the eval periods that I don't think, unless they had done a ton of scouting on someone before, I don't think they would watch him at NBPA for a couple of times and then go ahead and offer. Like with Brown, kind of knew that was probably going to happen pretty soon. But for someone that maybe they're watching for the first time or second or third time, probably you can just say, hey, I'll watch him again next live period and see if he plays as well, and then maybe think about pulling a trigger on an offer. So I, again, never say never in recruiting, but I'd be surprised if anything happened before this live period. And honestly, I'd be surprised if they offer anyone prior to the conclusion of Peach Jam, because I think you want that full kind of 2-week body of work to really assess and evaluate how these guys did.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. You wanting to see the entire summer, making sure that guys aren't just kind of a flash in the pan, or making sure guys didn't just have a good weekend and all of a sudden you offer them and go further in the recruiting process than you really want to.
And the other thing, they're in good shape with a lot of 2024 guys. And so I think they're trying to be very careful and selective about who, they decide to offer, especially in 24. Excuse me, because there's a lot of players in state who I think if North Carolina really pursued and really made top targets that they could get, and then who knows with the kind of national feelers that they put out there with the offers to Jackson and to Johnson. So just you have to be real careful, because I think the days of taking 5 guys in a high school class or 6 guys, I think those are gone. Just because of the way the portal works. So I think you're 5 if you can get like 5 great players, but I think 4 is probably looking like a better number. Not because they couldn't get 5 or 6 guys in one class, but just why do that when you can kind of plug and play with guys from the portal. So just something to watch out for.
No, it makes more sense from a roster development standpoint. I totally agree with you. All right, Sean, give me one guy that you want to see this week that you have not seen in person before in Kansas City.
That's a tough one. I'm going to go Cam Scott.
All right. Cam Scott's somebody who has been offered by UNC, a 6'5" wing guard out of Lexington, South Carolina. Sean hopes to see him. So we will put you on the spot in the next episode, and I'm sure you'll have a good write-up for IC once you get back and have seen some of these guys. Sherrell, is there anything else you want to add before we get out of here today?
Yeah, from NBPA, Jaron Stevenson, who was on Gigi Jackson's team. He's one of the other 2024 offers from UNC. Again, he is a rising junior at Seaforth High School in Pittsboro. I was really, really impressed with him, man, because the question from a lot of people who, again, I'm not a scout, I'm a reporter who loves basketball. I don't consider myself a scout, but from the scouting folks, a lot of the question marks were, does he have the motor to compete? At that higher level, and does he have the physicality to compete at that high level with top guys in the country, and then eventually with a major conference school, whether it's in the ACC or SEC or wherever. And I really was kind of blown away by him, because again, he was among the younger people there at NBPA, and physically he held up, even though he's not nearly as developed or strong as some of those other guys. It was a mindset, and he was happily accepted his role as screener, pick and pop, rebound, defend, block shots guy, which for his AU team and for his high school, he doesn't get to play that role. He has to be Mr. Everything, Mr. Facilitator, passer, dribbler, shooter. He has to do it all. So it was interesting to see on a team with Gigi And then with Aiden Sherrill, who started at the 5. So it was basically Jackson at the 3, Stevenson at the 4, and Aiden Sherrill at the 5. And so it was kind of nice to see Stevenson relish that role and do it well. So for me, I thought that was a big showing for him, because the skill and the ability at his height, that stuff isn't really in question. It's still developing, but it's not in question. It was the other stuff, and I thought he proved it, all week long.
Yeah, it's a great point, man. A lot of times when these kids are in either Scholastic or an AAU setting, you don't get to see the same things as you do when you put them with, other blue chippers and other elite players, which is what they're going to look like when they get to the next level. Sean, anything you want to add before we get out of here?
Nope. I think for mid-June or late July, there's a lot to cover in this one, and a lot to cover over the next few weeks as both of us get out some more.
Well, as always, I appreciate you guys making time for us. Again, if you're listening or watching this show, please rate and review us. We hadn't had any reviews on iTunes in a while. Y'all fix that. Go give us a review, 5 stars only. Tell us what you like and don't like. If you don't like it, hit us up on social media or email us and let us know what we can do better, because we want to make this show something that everybody that listens to it can appreciate. But we appreciate you listening and being a part of it. Appreciate John Siegley for producing. Appreciate Johnny T-Shirt for sponsoring. But most importantly, I appreciate Sean and Sherrell for being here, because they make this show what it is. Until next time, I am merely Joey Powell for Inside Carolina. This has been the Coast to Coast Podcast. We will catch you all next time.